Hi, friends. I just wanted to do a little video about post-traumatic stress response and kind of like some of the hidden aspects that occur. Um, so when you have post-traumatic stress response, which I'm extrapolating from post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress response is just a natural response like anybody in our in a traumatizing situation is going to have a stress response. And so just stopping the glare there. And something that I notice in like when you're in the demographic of post-traumatic stress response, and you have the autoimmune um, the autoimmune dysfunction from post-traumatic stress disorder. Uh, so you're seeking help. You're going to doctors. You're interacting with nurses, admin, insurance companies, their customer support, so-called. And if you're activating the insurance that you paid into through your FICA, when you work like a couple $100 a week of your paycheck goes to FICA, and that's goes to your disability insurance. So if you've you're activating your disability insurance, you're dealing with a lot of bureaucracy. And so if you qualified for disability, it means that you have a disability. And it is very interesting, particularly for the anxiety, depression, trauma, that I suspect there's a good proportion of people who are disabled may have anxiety and depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Uh, like you go into this other world um, that's different than the more mutual, more uh, like because like when you're working and an employee, I mean, of course you're disposable and you're exploited, but an employer kind of needs to keep you around, um, and so uh, the indignities are different somehow. And the thing is, when you're able-bodied, when you still have your marbles, you're doing um, fruitful, functional things that help balance your life. Uh, you have energy to go do fun things or restorative things, like taking a class, visiting with friends, and having the energy to do so. So it just really balances out. And the thing is also, when you're younger, you're just physically more able to maybe tune out, and maybe like the the habits of youth of just tuning out and kind of goofing off a little bit or a lot. Maybe that is strangely functional, because the if you're older and sober and lucid while you're having post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress response, and you're in the dysfunctional system, that I'm describing of bureaucracy, whether it's insurance companies or medical systems or the government or whatever, um, it's pretty uh, it's kind of excruciating. And the only way I'm getting through this is just my spiritual connection with God, honestly. Um, and I know it's just like kind of a long-winded um, video, but my point is that when you've uh, kind of fallen into um, the situation of being disabled, um, you can find that you're at the mercy of a lot of dysfunctional organization, dysfunctional institution, and because you're half of, you don't have the energy, the fortitude, you've lost something. Like if you've become disabled, if you've been seeking answers, if you've qualified, you've gotten diagnoses, you're kind of, and the thing is, like, the only reason why you've been seeking answers is because you don't have the function that you used to have. And it's funny because, like, it's like this slide, uh, and I'm sorry, I'm like kind of going in circles, but I guess what I wanted to say is when you're able-bodied and you're out there and you're working, and let's say you go to the store and you buy a bag of chips, and naughty, you should be grain-free, right? Let's say they're sweet potato chips. Anyway, um, so you go to the cashier rings it up, you give them money, they put it in a bag, they give you change and go. So that's like a healthy transaction. Um, we take it for granted when we're kind of in that world. But when you're in the world of chronic illness and disability, and particularly if you lack leverage, if you lack money, you're in this other world of different value systems. And a lot of the people who are in positions that are supposed to be there to help are um, like they've got this other standard. So I have found that I'll have an urgent call that I need to make, a voicemail, something, information that needs, that's time sensitive, and you can be calling a government office and they don't have a voicemail. Like, you have to call business hours, and I'm not just talking about calling food stamps or whatever. And speaking of food stamps and Medicare, Medicaid, they won't necessarily be there Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Like, there'll be half days, and of course, hoping to speak to a live person. It's like it's a joke. Like, it's understood that you're you like, you shouldn't expect to speak to a live person. That it's a miracle and a blessing, and that you should be willing to wait all day and never get to speak to a person. Seriously, like 8 hours is, you know, like it's as if like if you've become disabled and you're in the system that you deserve to be punished and deserve to have like weird double standards. Like if you never had a voicemail, like if you don't have voicemail, if you don't have um, if you don't deliver promptly according to their deadlines, you're up a creek. But um, these other entities, whether they're your doctor or your whatever, your the trusted agent of the public good, like they get to drop the ball. And when you're vulnerable and dependent, they get to they just get this like weird, it's like this power trip, and it's absolutely terrifying what these people do. And it's like this head game because they know you're dependent on them. They know that you're kind of halfway in the grave, honestly. um I mean, especially like the older you get. Like I'm just turned 49, and ageism apparently, I mean, I think I was probably experiencing ageism in my 30s. So uh and I think it's like it's wrong, this weird double standard. And what's to me worse is that my more sheltered friends think that, well, if there's, so if there's a disability system, that it's operating off of the same rules, that it's mutual. Like you go to the grocery store, you give them money, they give you your change and receipt and your bag of chips, and it's like that. And I want to say that I want to let you know, at least in my experience, it's not that clear. And there's like this cruelty, this head game that happens. And for instance, I had just recently had to do an update, and the person sent me snail mail, and I have a post office box which I hadn't checked. And the person never called me, never emailed me, and it's 2018, almost 2019. And and they feel justified that they're going to disqualify me possibly because I didn't get their mail. And um and there's like this weird pathological self-righteousness and like destruction, like um if we were running a business, like they are getting paid for being my, trusted agent of the public good. But if it was me paying them, they would never do this kind of stuff. They would never like pull the stunt of only contacting me via the mail and not following up when they hadn't heard in a week. They wait a month. Um, so I know it's like this painful long diatribe here, but I'm just trying to. I kind of want to let people know that we think there's a fail-safe that for, let's say, our loved ones, um, that's there for them. And maybe it works in some parts of the country and in some divisions, but like I live in Montana, and if you look it up online, it has the highest suicide rate, and I believe my city has the highest in the whole country. And there's a lot of disabled people here, a lot of mentally ill people, a lot of veterans, and native population as well. And that's like a whole other, um, like how native people are treated. I don't know a whole lot, but I have observed it, and there's just something like really, um, like Montana takes discrimination and negligence and like kind of uh, genocide, like this kind of energetic genocide, I would call it, to another level. Like I have never seen anything like it. You know, I've seen prejudice. I've been around prejudice, uh, but this is something like I don't know. Um, so, um, so my, so I feel like it's important to acknowledge that there's these what I'm going to call pathological double standards in an industry that preys upon um, vulnerable populations that have cognition and cognitive impairment, that have health issues, that have um, problems with their energy, and uh, and it's the very people who are supposed to help. And it's been my experience that these sociopaths are in these positions of power of supposing to help people, and so they're protected. Like they get the credibility of being a helper, sort of like when I worked at the organic farms that led to my disability. Like these psychopaths, sociopaths, they hook themselves up with cool industry, and they get the kudos, the accolades of being an organic farmer, but they're like bad people. They just take like exploitation as their birthright, and um, like they're just psychologically abusive. I mean, it was just a nightmare, a nightmare. Um, but I just keep on noticing this, and like when I was setting up my business and getting the license and the paperwork and everything, it's just a whole other experience. People get back to you within minutes, and they don't pull some weird bureaucratic passive aggressive. That's the word I'm looking for. Like when you are disabled and vulnerable, and you're needing to access like the medical world or the insurance world or the government bureaucracy world, there's all this passive aggressive behavior. And for some reason, when you're buying your bag of chips at the grocery store, for some reason they just don't do that passive aggressive. Generally, they don't. Like they don't pull some weird thing saying, "Oh, your $20 isn't good enough," or blah blah blah. I mean, like they don't jerk you around. But I mean, like telecommunication companies, yeah, they jerk you around. They're they are probably big government. Like they're probably some weird thing. um, there's probably some hidden connection, because why else would telecommunication, like why would telemarketers always be able to kind of do circles around telecom like rules, like um, but um, so it really grieves me. It grieves me that number one, to kind of be broken by the the community. I mean, the organic world. That it was so exploitative, and that uh, people just take it for granted that they can be abusive and exploitive in the name of organic farm. I'm like, that does not make sense. Two wrongs don't make a right. Just because you're an organic farmer does not mean you get to psychologically abuse people or physically, like unrealistically uh, push people. So I just wanted to point this out, that this uh, dynamic exists, and it's a really sick dynamic. And here where I am in Missoula, there's like pretty much across the board, there's this learned helplessness and hopelessness. Like people are like, there's this how like when I talk to practitioners or I talk to my peers, and it's understood that abuses happen, like really bad. I mean, even death, like, you know, kind of passive, violent death. Um, it's just taken as par for the course. And I've lived, I lived in New York, I lived in California and Oregon and some other places. And no, I mean, Philadelphia, I'm sure like this would be, uh, this could be found there for sure. And I'm sure it could be found elsewhere, but here it's much more across the board, like this kind of, um, I mean, it doesn't look apocalyptic, but people accept that there's a lack of trustworthy support for those in need, uh, and that that all these workers who are running whatever the insurance or the government or whatever bureaucratic offices, that they're just you know, they kind of just want this comfortable, predictable gig. And it's like everybody points out that these workers are underpaid and they're overworked. And yeah, like, I mean, I've been a worker who is underpaid and overworked. Like, I've been exploited most of my life. That's why I'm in this situation. Yet what my issue is, I understand, like, I can wait in a line, you know, and I can even deal with a little bit of nastiness and passive aggressiveness, but um what I've experienced is, it's just like, it's more than just somebody having a bad day. It's sort of like uh, people who are in these positions are like, this is their little empire, and they get to make life and death decisions for vulnerable people, and that's just not right. So, and my goal is to articulate what's going on and to figure out solutions. And I have found, like, so there's doesn't seem like there's people to complain to. When I, you know, have asked, like, who do I complain to, nobody knows anything. And when I find what seems to be an email, like, it's like the web messenger or whatever, like, there's just nobody in charge apparently, or they're very well hidden. And so of course, you know, nothing can be changed because feedback can't even be gathered, and it'll probably be ignored, I guess. um so sorry about the notification sound there. um so the solution, so it's like, I've tried doing you know, how to talk, healthy boundaries, verbal communication. I've tried trying to find decision makers to complain to kind of get empowerment that way. And my latest approach is turning to God and uh, asking God to take care of things, take care of me, and uh, and maybe all this obstruction is God's message to say, don't be around these systems. So that's an interesting idea, and because they haven't helped me as much as the effort that I put in. They haven't helped me. They have helped some because drinking slightly dirty water, you're still going to get hydrated. Like you might get dysentery, but you hydrated. Until you got dysentery. Um, so that is so I guess like I just wanted to kind of talk about the dark underbelly of the helping the fail-safe helping systems that they can be your worst enemy. They can be a vulnerable person's worst enemy, worse than the job that violated them, worse than the spouse or family. Um, and I just wanted to say, um, it's not a healthy situation to be in the system. I mean, like I'm clean, I'm sober, I meditate, I pray, I do my best to, like uplift my life and try to improve my life. And this situation is just like horrible. Um, so I've tried all this intellectual stuff, and it just barely has kept me going. So my current approach is this spiritual kind of the thing, and I'm open. I'm open to whatever God wants me to do, and I hope other people are finding um, solace and answers and helpful direction uh, in their life, and maybe uh, this moment here is me rambling could help somebody. So thank you for watching. Bye.